Hi, I'm David Tate. I'm Managing Director of Redmill Advance Training and Development Organisation to the financial services marketplace. And I'm joined today by John Smith, who's one of our amazing trainers, a chartered fellow. Hopefully I've got that right, but I'm sure he will he will let you know, who's going to talk a little bit about how you can get from level 4 to level 6 in the smartest and maybe most efficient way. So we're here to talk a little bit about chartered financial planner.
Indeed we are. Yep.
So you're a chartered financial planner.
Indeed, yes.
What's your qualifications?
So I am a fellow of the Personal Finance Society, and with that charter status as well. So I've gone through all these diploma exams that we talk about. I've gone through the advanced diploma exams we're going to talk about in this chat as well. So again, that came over several years of studying and sacrifice to get there, but it served me well in terms of being able to do the job that I do today in terms of helping people get through those exams.
So you've got all the qualifications.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Pretty much.
There's a few exams I don't specifically have, but I've got what I need. I've got what I need to, to do the job I do here.
Outstanding. So the route into the industry is level 4.
Yeah.
So that's the regulated diploma in financial planning. And I suppose there's 3 professional bodies, CISI, LIBF, CII. All slightly different, I suppose, although we're not here to talk about
different ways of getting to the same end destination.
And how many credits do you get when you get level 4 qualified?
So if we use CII as an example, that's probably the best example to use with credits, because not all the exam bodies use a kind of credit system. But with the CII, you need 100 credits, and you're achieving that by completing the 6 ARO exams, ARO 1 to ARO 6, a regulated diploma. There's other routes, other legacy routes to get to the diploma in financial planning, the old diploma in financial planning, which holds the same, kind of degree of, professional qualification designation. That would involve, a mixture of other exams, but essentially the regulated route, which I can imagine most people that are listening are considering going down, that would be 100 credits.
Cool. I think I got my FPCs originally back in 1997. Did I get credits for those?
Yes. So old school diploma.
Right, okay.
So you would have done your FPCs, then probably done your JOs, maybe a couple of arrows in there as well?
I did. I've got a degree in financial planning as well, so there you go. But things people don't know. So level 4 qualification, 3 professional bodies to get there, 100 credits.
Yep, 100 credits, yeah, yep.
So this is really about, getting from, you're in the game, you're a financial advisor, getting from level 4 to level 6, so from diploma to chartered.
Yeah.
So I suppose the first question is, why does it matter?
Why does it matter? Okay, well, level 4, just to give you a bit of context on this, level 4, because again, that's terminology, it's a bit of jargon. Let me just try and decipher that. Level 4 is pretty much A level or advanced A level or first year university. So if you think of that being level 4 in terms of the level of discipline, how much work it's going to take to get through, the kind of level of assessment. Level 6 is full degree. So if you think about full undergraduate honours degree, that's the equivalent of what you're doing in terms of completing level 6. So level 6 is going into more depth and detail than you learn at level 4. So if you think about level 4 being about essentially obtaining competence in the first place, so putting yourself in a position where you meet the requirements to be authorised as an advisor, then you're going to do your ongoing CPD to maintain your competence and make sure you're maintaining those skills and brushing up on key areas. Then you're thinking further professional development. That's where you're going with level 6 in terms of, I guess, making yourself more marketable, focusing on maybe specific specialisms or niches that you want to add to your toolkit in terms of areas of advice and areas of planning that you really want to home in on. Areas of complexity, that type of thing. And that's what the level 6 qualifications effectively are giving you exposure to. They're giving you exposure to a bit more depth on what you've already learned.
Level 6 undergraduate degree.
Yeah.
The route to that level 6 qualification then, typically what does that look like in terms of qualifications?
Yeah. So the common route that I have worked with students on before, after they complete their diploma, their level 4, which is, again, it is very much prescribed these days in terms of ARO 1 to ARO 6, 100 credits. To achieve the advanced diploma, which is effectively level 6 with the CII, you need a total of 290 credits. Now, you've already got 100 of those from your diploma. So what you're trying to find is 190 credits from other units, and there's a minimum requirement that 120 of those credits come from advanced diploma units, or AF exams, as they are coded with the CII. So the typical route that you would take is you would do 4 of those AF units to get those 120 credits.
Okay.
So those exams, which I'll go into a bit more detail in a second, are AF1, which is taxation, AF4, which is investment planning, AF8, which is retirement income planning, and AF5, which is the kind of mandatory unit that you have to do as a minimum at level 6, which is effectively the financial planning process.
And is that similar to Arrow 6 in your view then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is very similar. In fact, the process, the approach, the way it's assessed, very, very similar. And for that reason, we often recommend that if someone has done Arrow 6 recently and maybe wants to embark on that journey while it's still fresh, that they go down the AF5 route first.
So that's actually quite a good little hack then, right? Yeah. So if you're doing your level 4 qualification and you know from the outset that you're going to want to progress to chartered, you've just come out the back of that, you've done your Arrow 6, and you know you're definitely going to chartered, have a think about AF5 because it's all going to be fresh.
It makes sense. And again, it's all about, conserving that energy. It's all about, the study approach. Because bear in mind that after you've achieved level 4, chances are you're going into a full-time advice role, lots of pressure on you to build your business, get out there networking, seeing clients. Whereas when you were achieving or attaining level 6, chances are you're probably studying for that full-time and that was your kind of main priority. Studying for level 6 is not necessarily going to be your day-to-day priority. So you've got to find a way of working that around your work and life, basically, and getting the right balance.
So if you did AF5 straight after Arrow 6, how many credits is that giving you?
That's giving you another 30 advanced credits, and that's a mandatory unit, so you have to do AF5.
Okay, gotcha, and that would leave you 90 then?
That would leave you 90. So the other 3 AFs that you would do, typically, to get the other 90 credits would be AF1, which is taxation and trusts, AF4, which is investment planning, and AF8, which is retirement income planning. Now, AF8 is a little bit different because it's not an exam. It's coursework. You have to submit 3 separate assignments that are basically testing each part of the retirement planning process in terms of analysing the case, identifying needs and analysing those needs, and then coming back with recommendations in terms of how you achieve those goals in retirement. So it's a different type of study. It's a different type of discipline. It's really going to require a different approach to your study, because rather than you preparing for this one event in the future where you're going to be sitting in a room potentially for 2 to 3 hours sitting an exam closed book, what you're actually doing is over time gradually building up this portfolio of 3 assessments that you're able to complete obviously at your own pace and chip away at gradually over time, open book. So you kind of remove a lot of the exam pressure that you would normally be exposed to by doing that unit.
Okay. And would you recommend you would do them in any particular order? Is there a reason that you would recommend that?
Yeah, so I think we've covered AF5 first of all. I think that kind of makes sense. I think what I would then embark on would be one of the technical units, so AF1 or AF4.
Okay.
Question I get asked a lot by students is, would you do more than one at once, to try and get over the line quicker?
Oh, double bubble.
I would not recommend that. I appreciate that, some people are maybe a little bit more academic or more confident with these things than others, but I think, in terms of protecting the integrity of these qualifications and these exams at that level, it really does require that full dedication.
And they're hard.
They are difficult. I mean, we're talking, as I say, if you are studying for one of these exams over, let's say, maybe a kind of 2-year period, which is the typical time period you would kind of associate with that. If you're assuming that you're going to do a unit every 6 months, it's going to take you at least 2 years to achieve level 6. Yeah. Now, most undergraduate degrees are 3 or 4 years. Yeah. So you're basically condensing what would be a 3 to 4 year university course into 2 years while you're working full time and building your business.
You've got to be committed.
So you've got to be committed to it. You've got to be disciplined. You've got to reach out and get support from wherever you can get it. You've got to have a proper study plan in place. And I just don't think sitting 2 exams at the same time of that nature are indicative of that.
So what I've seen in terms of double bubbling, as it's called, is I have seen delegate students pairing exams, and a classic example would be AF4 and PCIAM, which would give you 60 credits if you did that. What's your view on that? I mean, what do you think about how similar are they? Yeah. And is it, if you have the time, is it worth double bubbling those particular qualifications? Yeah,
I mean, there's a couple of things on that. I think, first of all, recognising the fact that the exam that you're talking about, the Private Client Investment Advice Management, PCIM, through the CISI, that exam effectively is covering the equivalent of AF1 and AF4 in terms of content. It's covering tax and investments. So if you think about some of the challenges that we spoke about in terms of sitting 2 AF exams at the same time, that's kind of how it's going to feel doing PCIM. So you need to give yourself a little bit longer. And it's a different style as well. So each exam body's got its own style in terms of, you know, how the textbooks are laid out, how the exams are laid out, how questions are worded. And again, that can be challenging if you're kind of jumping in and out of, you know, exam bodies from time to time. If you're switching CII for CISI, then jumping back, it can sometimes be quite daunting in terms of the language and the approach in the assessment format. Again, that is a route that I've seen people taking, especially individuals that might want to keep their options open. So if you're an individual who's an advisor at the moment, you want to develop yourself more professionally, you want to make yourself more marketable, but you're thinking maybe longer term that you're going to go into more of an area of investment expertise and maybe investment management, then that's a good, you know, kind of top and tail exercise in terms of, you know, obviously doing these advanced exams, but also bolting PCIM in there as well as part of how you achieve that qualification, because you get the credits that effectively give you, you know, the equivalent of, you know, 30 credits at advanced diploma.
Okay, got it. So, so AF1, AF4, AF5, AF8.
Yes.
And then outside of that, to get the rest of the credits, what would you recommend?
So again, there are lots of exams you can do to make up those credits, because as long as you've met the minimum 100 at diploma and 120 at advanced diploma, you can pretty much get the other 70 from anywhere. But think about not just the credits, think about your professional development, think about how, again, you can make yourself more effective in your role. How can you get yourself in front of different types of clients or more clients? It's going to be from carving out a niche or a specialism. So think about things like long-term care. Think about things like complex tax planning, pension transfers, investment management. So there's several units there that I would always, if someone asked me the question, I would always recommend almost doing as a kind of, you know, a templated plan. So for example, CFA long-term care, I'd be considering that. That's a multiple choice exam that will give you 15 credits. Bolted in with that goes alongside it quite nicely, is equity release, which is also 15 credits, multiple choice exam.
So that's ER1?
ER1, yeah. So the two of them go hand in hand, because again, a lot of long-term care advice tends to be related to equity release in terms of how you use the property to fund long-term care.
Makes sense, right?
And to complete the set, you know, probably makes sense to do a mortgage exam as well if you haven't already done that in the past. So CF6.
So what we're talking about there really is be smart. Because if you're actually doing a qualification to get those credits to get to chartered, do similar style qualifications around it, because it's going to feel familiar.
Absolutely.
And obviously, to your point, if you're going to specialise in a particular area, you know, that makes sense as well to pursue those exams, I guess.
Exactly. And another thing worth pointing out as well, I think you kind of led into it earlier on when you were talking about, you know, doubling up. Whilst I wouldn't necessarily recommend doubling up on level 6 exams, where it can be quite useful is if you're doing, for example, a long-term care exam or an investment exam to get additional credits, and you know that you've got another level 6 exam on the horizon that you've booked in, maybe consider doing that exam in or around that exam. So for example, AF4, if you are booked in to sit AF4, which is the investment level 6 exam of the CII, and you know that you're going to need more credits to get up to the total 290 to get chartered, might make sense that you then look at another multiple choice exam that is related to investments. So J10, for example, discretionary investment management, because there's going to be a huge overlap there in the syllabus. It's going to be really worthwhile you revising for that exam and preparing for that exam while you're also focused on investments for AF4. If you are preparing to do AF1, which is the tax and trusts exam, there's a standalone trusts exam, JO2. Makes sense, again, that you double up there, because you're effectively studying for 2 exams for the price of 1, as we would say. So there's a lot of opportunity there to double up in exams. I've kind of talked about RO6 and AF5 as well, being similar and sitting them close together. So I think there's an opportunity to do this quite efficiently in terms of time, but also bearing in mind that you need to protect the integrity of that qualification and be realistic with the timescales that you're setting out for yourself, because it is not going to be easy. It's going to be challenging, just like level 4 would have been challenging for you at the time, but the difference is that you're doing these qualifications now alongside a very demanding day job.
Yes, those are really good tips though, because really what we're talking about is interweaving those level 4 qualifications with those level 6 qualifications, and and you're already learning, I guess, that particular area. Investments is a great example, so why not bolt other stuff in and around there? But it is, you're right in what you're saying. I mean, life gets in the way, doesn't it? I mean, if you're working a full-time job, You've got, you know, a wife and 2 kids at home, and you're working late, and you've got the family pressures, and weekends are family time. It's actually fitting all of this stuff in. So being really efficient in your thinking like that actually is quite a smart thing to do, which is, you know, think about, you've got to make up those credits, so why not do it in relevant areas whilst you're studying those chartered level exams?
And as well as that, just remind yourself why you're doing it. Because sometimes you can come across, you know, people who are studying for these exams where it's almost like they feel obliged to do it.
Yeah.
And I think you need to want to do it. When it comes to level 6, it should be all about your own view on your professional development and how you can improve and how you can basically, you know, tweak those skills to that particular niche or specialism that you want to focus on. And if you don't really have the attitude, or you don't have the bandwidth to do that, then it's going to be a real struggle, and that will be a clash. That will be something that will constantly get in the way. So I think it's about being realistic up front and saying, look, is this going to benefit me in role? Is it going to benefit my career development? Can I clearly see the benefits of doing that? And then being realistic in terms of what that's going to entail, setting realistic timescales, committing that time to your diary, just like your day job, just like your social commitments. Get that time in the diary so that you're committing to it and treating it and taking it seriously. But make sure you don't go too far in another direction where you're sacrificing having a life and having a social life. Because remember, you're working full time. You're working in a demanding environment, so you need to make sure you get that balance so that you're not just either working or studying. And it's really important to get that.
Yeah, and
Well-being's so important.
It really is. Well, exactly, well-being, right? And actually looking after yourself,
Exactly.
not burning yourself out. And it's easy to talk about this stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Around getting chartered and getting those level 6 qualifications and popping those level 4 exams in, but being realistic, you know, life it just isn't like that, John. I mean, it's, you know, we've got busy lives. Most people have busy lives, and actually it's really important that you protect that as well. So that's a really important point. Actually, just around that journey then, so you think, just talking about time frame for chartered, you mentioned 2 years, that's a realistic time frame?
I would say so. And I think a common route that I would be advising would be, again, consider EF5, especially if you're recently qualified, because again, there are a lot of advisors who, even though, you know, you need to have at least 3 years of industry experience to actually get the chartered designation. You can get the advanced diploma as soon as you're qualified and you've got the, you know, the qualifications required. So a lot of advisors who, you know, have gone through the level 4 diploma, while it's still fresh and whilst they've got that kind of, you know, that appetite and, you know, they're in that routine, and while they're in the early stages of building their business, they will just want to kick on with that rather than maybe further down the line when things are really, really busy, trying to find the time to kind of navigate through it. So that's the reason why AF5 kind of makes sense as a starting point, because the last exam they would have sat before that would have been RO6. And then I would say AF1 or AF4, I've not really got a preference either way. They're both as important as each other. You're probably going to need to do both of them in terms of getting the credits. And they're both as challenging as each other. You know, I wouldn't say there's one of them that is more straightforward or a little bit kind of easier, you know, on the study than the other. So I think either or, I think it's probably going to be aligned to your own preferences and maybe what you're doing in your business at that point in time. And then AF8's an interesting one because it's a coursework submission, because you're doing these 3 assessments and you can pretty much submit them at any time over the course of a year. You've got 12 months to do the 3 assessments. What is quite useful is that because you know you can only sit those other exams every 6 months, you're going to have some downtime in between. So you sit AF1, AF4 or AF5, you're going to have to wait probably 2 months to get your result. So you've got some downtime where you're waiting on your result to then decide whether you go ahead and sit the next one. That is a good opportunity for you to just kick on with your AF8 assessments and make progress with them. So that you're kind of doing AF8 in the background rather than that being a fresh unit that you're picking up after you've passed those other 3 exams. And I think by doing it that way, you can often, you know, from an efficiency perspective, you know, trim it down to approximately 2 years to achieve your advanced diploma.
I mean, to be fair, you're making it sound so easy, but it really isn't, is it?
It really isn't. It's not easy, but again, it's like anything else. You know, you can make it as easy or as challenging as you want to make it.
Yeah, and it's just about being smart, isn't it? And that's what we're talking about. It's those little hacks. So RO6, look at AF5, you know, fit those relevant level 4 qualifications in around those level 6 qualifications, and that's going to help you get there a little bit more efficiently.
Absolutely.
And efficient, I mean, advisors' time's precious.
Exactly.
They don't have much, do they?
Exactly,
So,
and it's about striking that balance because it's so important. I know I've already mentioned it. You've got to respect the integrity of the qualification. You know, this is a degree level qualification, and there's no shortcuts to it. You know, so we're not going to, you know, we as, you know, a training provider, we will never kid anyone on that there's a quick and fast way to doing this. You know, you've got to put the work in, and, you know, you've got to be curious, and you've got to reach out and ask questions, and we obviously do whatever we can to support that, but that requires the input from the student. You know, there is no fast track, there is no easy way of achieving this, just like there is no easy way of achieving a degree.
yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, there's no shortcuts there. So I think it's about, so it's really important that you kind of respect the integrity of it and you're doing it for the right reasons. You know, I've seen situations in the past where you can kind of tell sometimes with students that they're doing it because they almost feel pressured or obliged to do it. And there will come a point in time where that might happen because there's been a lot of talk, you know, for over a decade now, that chartered will become the standard in terms of, you know, entry level.
And do you think that'll happen in your view? Do you think we might get there at some point?
I'm not too sure if we will. What I think is more likely is that I think level 4 will become a bit more demanding and the assessment format will change.
So demanding, you mean more difficult? Or
More difficult in terms of having to apply it more and having to demonstrate it in more of a, you know, a kind of advice style environment. You know, so building more skill into it rather than just technical knowledge.
I think that's wholly possible as well.
You know, I think there's been a lot of talk of level 6 being the target for a long time. I think if it was going to happen, I think it would have happened by now. But I definitely think there will be a push and there'll be constant pressure from within the profession as well, especially, you know, firms that, you know, are doing holistic, you know, full fat financial planning. You know, real skills-based planning. There'll continue to be that push to really kind of push on and increase the level of discipline and designation required. But I think the more likely approach across the entire market is going to be for level 4 to step up and be maybe a little bit more kind of challenging, or certainly the assessment format to be a bit more challenging. I think level 6 will remain almost the aspiration, or the kind of you know, professional development qualification rather than the standard or the bare minimum.
So that's cool. So just to kind of round it up from a individual perspective, right? So that's obviously lots of really good information around the qualifications, right, and the credits, and a smart and efficient way of thinking about how you might structure your time to get there. But I'm just interested on your view, like why chartered? So there's still, you know, there's roughly 35,000 financial planners in the market. Number's debatable, but it's there or thereabouts. Not many of them are chartered, so let's not quote a number on that. But like, why chartered? What does it do for you as an individual? Why should people, in your view, want to progress to chartered planner?
Well, I think if you speak to most people in, you know, in advice firms and advice businesses, a lot of them will tell you the same thing, and that is that they prefer to promote themselves as a profession rather than an industry. Because if you promote yourself as a profession, again, it sounds very more professional, as the word would suggest, and you're more likely to be able to kind of market yourself to the types of clients and you know, the opportunities that are out there to kind of engage with those types of clients. I think the word industry maybe kind of dilutes that slightly and kind of makes it more kind of product focused and more you know, service focused, rather than, you know, this idea of speaking to someone who is at the pinnacle of their profession. So I think there is that angle of, you know, firms becoming more and more aware of this in terms of how they promote themselves, how they market themselves to clients. And I guess just because there's more firms entering the, you know, the profession, it's going to be harder for clients to choose who they go with. And I think that could be the deciding factor. It could be that clients are looking for chartered financial planners rather than just, you know, diploma qualified advisors. Case in point, chances are that same client works with a chartered accountant. Chances are when that client was buying or selling their house, they worked with a chartered surveyor. So the word chartered is not unique to our profession. It is a professional designation across all disciplines. And I think, you know, if you were an individual who was looking for legal advice, or you were looking for, you know, accounting services, every chance is that your starting point will be to say, I want to work with someone who is at the pinnacle. I want to work with someone who is chartered and qualified to the highest level. And I think that should be the same for our profession as well. I think it's only fair that those firms and those individuals that show that extra commitment and go the extra mile to professionally develop themselves and go through that discipline would be the ones that would naturally, be in a position where more clients are likely to want to engage with them and want to talk about complex issues and sensitive issues with them.
Yeah, and it might even, as an individual, make you more attractive in the recruitment market, I guess. Because,
absolutely.
well, from a client perspective, yeah, certainly. But I guess the other side of that coin is if you're a financial planning organisation and you're hiring and you want to be a chartered firm, you have to have a certain amount of your individuals at chartered level, so perhaps it actually makes you more attractive in that recruitment market as well.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. But again, that's the way I always talk about it. I always talk about it being similar to other professions that are on the same level, other professional services that your clients are likely to tap into. You want to be on the same level, you want to be perceived in the same way as those other professions that your client's dealing with. You want to be in a situation where if your client's got a list of contacts that they are going to get in touch with in an emergency, that you're near the top of the list. You are a trusted partner of those clients, where they will pick up the phone and phone you when they need advice on their finances and financial planning. Just like if they need someone to do accounting for them, they'll go to their chartered accountant. If they are buying or selling a house, they'll go to their chartered surveyor. It's all about recognising that we are a profession just like they are, and I think achieving chartered status, not only as an individual, as a firm, firmly plants you in that environment.
And what an achievement it is as well, because as we've spoken today, it's not an easy qualification or an easy designation rather to achieve through the qualifications that you need to get there. There's probably some smart ways that we discussed today to get you there maybe a little bit more efficiently.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thank you very much, John. I mean, you are the consummate professional, right? You're
too kind.
But it's true.
You're too kind.
It's true. And a phenomenal trainer. And actually, if anybody is listening who wants to get to chartered, then they could do far worse than giving us a shout and asking for John Smith to give them a helping hand to get there. So thanks very much for that, John.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you.
Cheers.